Galactic Council's ultimatum failed. Now humanity strikes back. The Galactic Council's ultimatum arrived in the form of 1,000 warships darkening Earth's skies. Their message was simple: surrender. Submit to the authority of the Council, hand over control of all advanced technology, and accept their dominion, or be annihilated. Humanity's answer came swiftly. A single transmission, broadcast across every known frequency from Sol to the farthest reaches of the galactic core. No. The silence that followed was deafening. The Council's arrogance had blinded them. They had seen humanity's rise, watched their relentless expansion into the void, but they had always believed them to be reckless, disorganized, and above all, inferior. They had assumed that the threat of destruction would be enough. That no species would dare defy the combined might of the galaxy. They were wrong. Admiral Varek of the Zevantai Dominion, Supreme Commander of the Council Fleet, narrowed his reptilian eyes as he stood aboard his flagship, the Imperium Ascendant, high above Earth. His voice dripped with disdain as he addressed the gathered war council. Humans do not understand their place. They have mistaken defiance for strength. We will correct them. Beside him, representatives of the Council's ruling species nodded in agreement. The chitinous Khazor clicked their mandibles in approval, the Avaxi spread their luminous wings in satisfaction, and the Genbar, their bulbous bodies pulsing with bioelectric energy, hummed in unified assent. Humanity's defiance would be crushed. Earth's defenses, primitive in comparison to the Council's war machine, would shatter beneath the orbital bombardment. And once their world burned, the rest of their colonies would fall in line. The invasion was set. The storm breaks. The first strike came without warning. Council dreadnoughts, massive city-sized behemoths of war, descended into low orbit, their weapons primed. Plasma lances, powerful enough to vaporize entire continents, began charging. The sky over Earth turned red with the light of impending annihilation. And then, something impossible happened. The Imperium Ascendant trembled violently, alarms blaring as Admiral Varek was thrown from his command chair. The vast hollow display before him flickered and glitched before stabilizing, revealing the source of the disturbance. A black void had opened on the far side of the system. Not a wormhole. Not a hyperspace anomaly. A rift, a tear in space itself. And from that abyss they came. Human warships, unlike anything the Council had ever encountered, emerged in formation. Sleek, angular constructs of matte black metal, bristling with weaponry silent but undeniable. The largest of them, a leviathan of steel and death, dwarfed even the Council's greatest dreadnoughts. The Imperium Ascendant's sensors struggled to classify the human vessels, their readings fluctuating wildly. But there was one undeniable fact. The humans had technology beyond anything the Council had ever imagined. Varek snarled, his claws digging into the metal railing before him. Impossible. They are primitives. They do not possess this level of technology. But reality cared little for his disbelief. Across the fleet, captains called out in confusion and fear as human warships began moving, cutting through the void with impossible precision. And then, the slaughter began. The lead human ship, designated Nemesis by its transponder, fired its first shot. Not plasma. Not railgun slugs. Something new. A pulse of blue-white energy surged forward, expanding as it traveled. It did not explode upon impact. Instead it erased. Where once a Council battleship had floated, now there was nothing. No debris. No wreckage. Just absence. Panic spread through the Council fleet. The Khazor ships broke formation first, their insectoid captains screeching in terror. The Avaxi followed, their luminous wings dimming as their ships turned to flee. Admiral Varek, for all his arrogance, did not hesitate. All ships. Open fire. Destroy them now. 1,000 beams of light, torpedoes, and kinetic slugs surged forward, only to find nothing. The Nemesis and its fleet vanished. For one breathless moment, silence reigned. Then the human fleet reappeared, behind the Council forces. And they fired. The Imperium Ascendant shuddered as another pulse of energy cut through its shields like they weren't even there. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks, crew members were flung across the command deck, and Varek felt something he had never known before. Fear. The humans had lied. They had not been reckless. They had not been disorganized. They had been waiting. Waiting for the Council to make its move. Waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. And now the Galactic Council's greatest fleet, its armada of terror, was being torn apart like fragile glass. Varek turned to his officers, his voice a desperate snarl. Find me a way out of this. Now. But before his orders could even be carried out, a new message arrived. A simple transmission broadcast across all frequencies. A single voice. Human. Cold. Unforgiving. You wanted war? Now you have it. Humanity's first counterattack has left the Council reeling, but the battle is far from over. The next section will escalate the stakes even further. The bridge of the Imperium Ascendant was chaos. Alarms blared, warning lights flashed in frantic patterns, and the scent of burnt circuitry filled the air. Admiral Varek's vision blurred as he pulled himself upright, his claws digging into the metal of his command chair. The human fleet had materialized behind them, again. Their vessels moved unlike anything in the Council's databases. Faster than light, yet without any of the telltale energy signatures of warp or hyperspace travel. They were using something else. Something the Council did not understand. Status report. Varek barked, his voice cutting through the confusion. A panicked Zevantai officer clutched the edge of his console. The rear battalions are gone, Admiral. They're just gone. The humans erased them. Varek's blood ran cold. No wreckage, no lifeboats, no distress signals. Just absence. Like those ships had never existed. A booming impact rocked the Imperium Ascendant, sending a fresh wave of tremors through its reinforced hull. The main view screen flickered, and Varek saw something that sent a chill down his spine. The Nemesis, the largest of the human ships, had closed the distance impossibly fast. It loomed ahead like a harbinger of death, its weapon banks glowing with a deep, unnatural blue light. Incoming transmission. A comms officer shouted. The screen shifted to reveal a human. A woman, her face framed by short, silver-streaked hair, her eyes cold as the void. Her uniform bore no rank insignia, just a single symbol, a stylized, burning star. She leaned forward, voice steady, unshaken. This is Admiral Morgan Reyes of the UNSC Dreadnought Nemesis. Galactic Council forces, you are in violation of Sol's sovereignty. You will power down your weapons, surrender your fleet, and stand trial for crimes against humanity. Varek's jaw clenched. This was not a negotiation. This was a demand. A demand made by a species that had spent centuries adapting, fighting, surviving against all odds. A species that had been underestimated, until now. Varek hissed through his fangs. You overstep, human. You cannot expect us to surrender to you. Rhea's expression didn't change. Then you'll burn with the rest. The transmission cut out. And hell arrived. The human onslaught. The Nemesis opened fire. A pulse of blue-white energy surged forth, colliding with the Imperium Ascendant's shields. Unlike conventional weapons, it did not overload them, it ignored them. The protective barriers flickered once and then ceased to exist. The next barrage tore through the Council flagship's armor like it was made of paper. Decks collapsed. Hull plating liquefied. Entire sections of the ship simply vanished. All across the battlefield, Council ships fared no better. The Zevantai cruisers, bred for endurance, shattered under the first volley. Their heavy plating meant nothing when the enemy's weapons did not simply strike them, but unmade them. Khazor carriers deployed thousands of drone fighters in a desperate counterattack, their swarms moving in coordinated patterns. They were erased in seconds. Varek's claws trembled as he clutched the railing. The battle had become a massacre. The Council was losing. No, not just losing. Dying. The realization crashed down on him with the force of a collapsing star. The humans weren't merely fighting for victory. They weren't here to conquer. They were here to end the war before it began. We must retreat. One of the bridge officers cried, desperation in his voice. Varek snarled, his pride warring with his survival instincts. The Council had never been forced to retreat. They had been the ones who dictated wars, who shattered civilizations with impunity. Now they were the ones being hunted. The Imperium Ascendant lurched again as another blast tore through its aft section. Emergency sirens screamed as the ship's structural integrity dropped past critical levels. They would not survive another hit. Varek had no choice. All ships. Full retreat. Get to hyperspace now. The order was met with immediate action. What remained of the once mighty Council fleet turned and burned hard for escape vectors. Their formation collapsed entirely, captains prioritizing their own survival over any semblance of order. But the humans weren't finished. As the first Council ships began spooling up their hyperspace drives, a new energy surge rippled across the battlefield. The humans had deployed something. A dampening field. One by one, the Council ships' hyperspace drives failed. Panic erupted through the comm channels. Our drive is offline. We can't jump. The field's interfering with our systems. We're trapped. The realization hit Varric with the force of a meteor strike. The humans had anticipated this. They knew the council would attempt to flee, and they had made sure they couldn't. The battle was no longer a battle. It was extermination. A glimmer of hope. Varric's mind raced. If they could not jump, there was only one option left. Escape manually. He activated the emergency beacon, linking all surviving ships to his command frequency. All remaining vessels, break formation. Scatter. If we cannot jump, we will run. It was a desperate plan, but desperation was all they had left. And it worked, for a moment. The battlefield dissolved into chaos as ships fled in different directions, some diving toward planetary atmospheres, others banking hard toward asteroid belts in a frantic attempt to evade pursuit. Some made it. Most did not. Varric watched as a dozen Council warships were erased in less than 30 seconds. Humanity's warships did not pursue recklessly. They hunted with precision. Each shot was calculated. Each movement designed to eliminate. But the scattering strategy had done one thing: it had bought Varric himself a chance. The Imperium Ascendant was burning, its hull breached in multiple sections. But its engines still worked, and Varric would not die here. Not yet. Activate the stealth module, he ordered. A flicker of darkness rippled across the flagship as its emergency cloaking system engaged. The Imperium Ascendant vanished from the battlefield, slipping through the chaos unnoticed. Varric did not watch the battle's end. He did not need to. The Council had lost. Humanity had proven its strength in a way no one had anticipated. And as Varric's ship fled into the black void, a singular, horrifying realization settled in his chest. This was not the end of the war. This was only the beginning. The Council fleet has been annihilated. The survivors are fleeing. But Varric has escaped, and what he has seen will change everything. The war is no longer about control. It is about survival. The Imperium Ascendant drifted in the void, its engines running on emergency power. Wounded, broken, but still alive. Admiral Varric slumped into his chair, the bridge illuminated only by the dim red glow of failing systems. The battle was over. And the Council had lost. His claws dug into the armrests as the reality set in. This wasn't just a defeat, it was annihilation. The human fleet had done something impossible. They hadn't just won. They had made sure the Council would never forget. A chime interrupted his thoughts. One of the surviving bridge officers, a young Avarian with blood streaked across his feathers, turned toward him. "Sir. Transmission incoming." Varric's breath caught in his throat. Had the humans found them? No. If they had, they would not be transmitting. "Patch it through," he ordered, steeling himself. The main display flickered to life, revealing a figure Varric had never wanted to see again. The Council's last hope. High Chancellor Orcs of the Galactic Council. His deep crimson robes were in disarray, the golden crest of the Council hanging loosely around his thick neck. Behind him, aides scurried like panicked rodents, their voices overlapping in a frenzy of crisis management. "Admiral Varric," Orcs growled. "What happened?" Varric exhaled slowly. "The humans, they obliterated us." Silence. The Chancellor's mandibles clicked in frustration. "How many of our forces remain?" Varric hesitated, checking the damage reports scrolling across his screen. The numbers were worse than he had feared. "Less than 15% of our fleet survived," he admitted. "We lost nearly everything." Orcs' gaze darkened. "And the humans?" Varric hesitated. "Minimal casualties. They fought with perfect precision. It was not just overwhelming force. It was tactical extermination. They crippled our command structure in minutes. They knew how we would react before we did." A long pause. Then, "They are no longer prey." It was a whisper. A whisper from a ruler who had, for centuries, seen humanity as an annoyance at best. A species allowed into the Council out of amusement, permitted to exist under the condition that they never rose beyond their station. Now, those same creatures had shattered the most powerful fleet in the known galaxy. Orcs straightened. "Return to the core systems immediately. We must prepare for..." The transmission cut off. For a second, Varric thought it was a glitch. Then the alarm screamed. "The humans have found them. Multiple incoming vessels." The sensor officer shouted. Varric whipped around, his heart pounding. The tactical display flickered, and then, there they were. 6 human warships. No, 7. They emerged from the void like wraiths, their hulls gleaming in the distant starlight. The Nemesis was among them. At their head, leading the hunt, was Admiral Morgan Reyes. She had found him. Stealth system is failing. The officer shouted. They must have tracked us. Impossible. No species in the known galaxy had been able to track a ship in cloak before. But humans had. Varek's mind raced. They could not fight these ships. Not in their current state. He had one option. Prepare the jump drive, he barked. But sir, the dampening field. Find a way. The bridge officers scrambled, inputting emergency commands. The humans were closing in, weapons hot, preparing for the final kill. And then, the comms activated. A final offer. Admiral Reyes' face appeared on the screen, just as cold as before. But there was something new in her expression now. A flicker of amusement. Running again, Admiral? She asked. Varek's claws curled into a fist. You've already won. What more do you want? Reyes leaned forward. The truth. Silence. Varek's heart pounded in his chest. What truth? He asked carefully. Reyes tilted her head slightly. The Council's fleets are powerful, but not this powerful. You had technology beyond your means. You had strategic knowledge you shouldn't have possessed. Varek's blood ran cold. She knew. The humans knew. For the first time since the battle began, true fear sank into his bones. Because there was something the humans did not yet understand. The Council had never intended to fight humanity alone. They had help. The dark secret of the Council. Varek hesitated. This was dangerous knowledge. Knowledge that could shift the entire balance of power. But if humanity was capable of this much devastation, perhaps they were the only ones who could know. His jaw tightened. You want the truth, Reyes? She didn't speak. She just watched. And Varek exhaled. The Council's power has never been its own, he said. We were given it. A flicker of interest crossed Reyes' face. By who? Varek hesitated only a moment before he answered. The architects. A rare silence filled the bridge. Even Reyes seemed caught off guard. The architects, she repeated slowly. Varek nodded. You call them myths, but they are real. They exist beyond this galaxy. Beyond your understanding. He paused. Then. They are watching. And when they see what you've done, they will come. A long pause. Then Reyes smiled. A slow, knowing smile. Good, she said. The transmission cut out. Humanity's next war. Varek barely had time to process what had happened before the humans moved. The Nemesis fired, not at his ship but at the space beside it. A precise shot. A warning. Then one by one the human ships vanished. They could have destroyed him. They didn't. Because they had learned what they needed to know. Varek's claws dug into the armrest of his chair. The architects were coming. And the humans were not afraid. They were waiting. The humans have learned of the architects, the true overlords behind the Council's power. But instead of fear, humanity welcomes the challenge. The real war is just beginning. Admiral Reyes leaned back in her command chair, watching as the last traces of the Council fleet vanished into the void. The Imperium Ascendant had limped away, wounded but alive. Varek had given them exactly what they needed. The architects were real. For centuries they had been a rumor, a myth. Ancient precursors who had supposedly shaped the balance of power in the galaxy. The Council had dismissed them as legends to keep humanity complacent. But now Reyes knew the truth. And that changed everything. Humanity was no longer fighting a war. They were preparing for a reckoning. She turned toward her bridge crew. Bring up the projections. I want every bit of data on the architects. The holo display flickered, loading every piece of intelligence humanity had gathered. The results were grim. The architects had never lost a war. Wherever they went, they dominated. Entire civilizations had vanished without a trace. The Council had merely been a caretaker government, allowed to rule only as long as they maintained order. But by shattering the Council's power, humanity had broken that balance. The architects would come. Reyes exhaled, tapping her fingers on the armrest. How long do we have? Her chief intelligence officer, Lieutenant Kieran Vasquez, didn't look up from his screen. Unknown. Could be months. Could be years. But given the scale of their influence, I'd bet on months. Silence settled over the bridge. Then Reyes smiled. Good, she said. The bridge crew turned to her in shock. But Vasquez just exhaled and shook his head. You're enjoying this, aren't you? She chuckled. I didn't sign up to push papers. If we're going to make history, we might as well do it right. Her eyes gleamed as she looked at the holomap. This wasn't over. It was just the beginning. Humanity's response. The Nemesis returned to Luna Command, the heart of humanity's military operations. The entire system was on high alert. The Council's defeat had sent shockwaves through the galaxy, and now every species was watching humanity. Some, like the Krosh, wanted an alliance. Others, like the Tvex Dominion, were debating whether to preemptively strike. But none of it mattered. Because humanity wasn't waiting. They were preparing. Inside the war room, the greatest minds of Earth, Mars, and Titan had gathered. Admirals, generals, intelligence officers, and strategists, every leader who had shaped the war against the Council was here. At the center of it all stood Reyes. She activated the holoprojector. A massive, unfathomable structure appeared before them. It was unlike anything they had seen before, sleek, perfect, almost organic in design. The only known image of an architect vessel. Everything we know about war, Reyes began, is about to be rewritten. The room was silent. Varric confirmed what we suspected. The Council's power wasn't natural. It was given to them. Which means we haven't just made enemies of the Council. We've caught the attention of something far worse. A deep murmur ran through the crowd. Reyes continued. They will come. And when they do, we need to be ready. Not just to fight. She paused, eyes narrowing. To win. The murmur stopped. No one had expected her to say that. Because no one had ever beaten the architects. A grizzled general stepped forward. With respect, Admiral. Do you understand what that means? Reyes smirked. I do. It means we don't just fight like humans. We fight like Deathworlders. The room erupted. Some in shock, others in excitement. Humanity had always been underestimated. But against the architects. Even their own leaders were unsure. But Reyes wasn't. She turned to Vasquez. How many new warships do we have under construction? 72 Dreadnought-class vessels, he answered. Another 100 on the way. That's not enough, Reyes said. Double it. Another murmur. The general frowned. That will put an incredible strain on our resources. We just crushed the most powerful military force in the known galaxy, Reyes interrupted. Every species out there is either terrified of us or ready to align with us. We use that. We trade. We take their resources. We prepare. Silence. Then, slowly, the leaders nodded. Because she was right. Humanity had done the impossible. And they weren't about to stop now. The architects moved. Days later, the first sign appeared. Deep space probes, ones hidden beyond the reach of the Council, picked up something. Something massive. It wasn't a fleet. It wasn't even a ship. It was a planet-sized construct emerging from the void. It had no identifiable propulsion system. No heat signatures. No broadcasts. It simply moved. Straight toward human space. When the footage arrived at Luna Command, Reyes watched in silence. The entire war room was on edge. No one spoke. Until Vasquez whispered, "That's not a ship." Reyes exhaled slowly. "No." She leaned forward, her fingers tightening into a fist. "It's an invasion." The room held its breath. The architects were coming. And for the first time in history, they weren't arriving as legends. They were coming as an enemy. The first shot. The architects made no demands. No warnings. They didn't speak. They simply attacked. In the Proxima Centauri system, a human fleet stood guard. It was supposed to be a show of force. A deterrent. But when the architect construct arrived, the battle lasted less than 10 minutes. Every human warship, obliterated. Not with weapons. With technology beyond comprehension. The survivors' final transmissions spoke of entire ships vanishing into nothingness. Energy signatures that didn't make sense. A presence that was felt before it was seen. And then silence. When the footage reached Reyes, she didn't flinch. Instead, she stood. And she smiled. Because the architects had just made a critical mistake. They had assumed humanity would break. They had assumed this battle would be like all the others. They were wrong. Reyes turned to her officers. "Get me the High Chancellor of the Council." Vasquez frowned. "Varric." "No," Reyes said. "Oraxis." The entire room tensed. The leader of the very government humanity had just shattered. Reyes smirked. "He's about to realize," she said, "that humanity was never his enemy." Legendary ending, humanity's true war begins. The architects had arrived. They had shown their power. But instead of surrender, they had found something no other species had ever given them. Defiance. Humanity would not bow. They would fight. And for the first time in history, the architects were about to learn the truth. They were not gods. They were just another empire. And humanity was coming for them. Fire. Humanity refused to kneel. Now the galaxy will burn. Fire. They thought they could control us. They thought we would surrender. They were wrong. Collision: what happens next? Will humanity rise and shatter the architects, or will they become just another extinct species? Let me know if you want a part 2. Comment your theories, share the story, and subscribe for more epic HFY tales. Rocket fire. Humanity isn't just fighting back. We're changing the galaxy forever. Smiling face with horns: high voltage.